As an ally, I'm always keen to know this. What are the panel looking for from a good ally? Maybe we could start with you, Nina.
Thank you for that question. I am lucky because I've already had my talk, so I've already gone through several things. And for me, especially because when I was given the brief for this talk, I was asked to particularly talk to leaders and exactly say that what they could do as an ally. And so a lot of the things that I mentioned, they particularly focus on trans inclusion. And I'm not trans, so I'm not entirely gender conforming either. But for me, it is about, no matter what your identity is, and if you're an ally but you're bisexual, as I am, you are looking at where that agency is most needed and that allyship is most needed. And for me, I think similar to some of the experiences you talked about, I haven't necessarily had a lot of overt discrimination. I've had some, but that's not necessarily where it is for me, but that is the experience that my trans friend talk about. I had a friend mention on a story, they were just, on their Instagram, they were just talking about, in a wider context, they were like, and then I was spat at on the way home. And they were honestly like, this is not something worth commenting about. It's not actually the point of the story. And I don't remember the rest of the story because I remember that and it really sticks with me. And so I think particularly learning how you can be an ally to trans people is so important today because of the context in which we are working.
Thanks for that, Nina. Yeah, I'm really proud of the fact that we've got the network, and it's a support place, it's a safe place for people to come, and we've got a lot of allies, and we're always trying to look for ways that allies can help support us in our cause. So thanks for that. I don't know if anybody else has got any views on that, or whether we move on to another question.
I think the only other thing that I would have to add to that beautiful statement is just to approach us with empathy and sincerity. And I know that sounds like a really quick, easy thing to say, but it's often really missing. And I was telling you about the experience I had at the end of last year when I was walking home, or cycling home, and got called an abomination because I said that I was queer. And to be able to bring that story back to my colleagues and be met with that sincere, wow, that's still happening. I'm really sorry that that happened to you. Do you want me to do anything? Is there anything that I can do to make you feel safe again on your way home? To be met with that was so beautiful and moving, and the first time I'd ever been met with such warmth and understanding from a colleague was just incredible. And now that experience sits with me, not in a way that brings sadness, but in a way that actually gives me a lot of hope and joy and gratitude for the colleagues I have right now. So, yeah.
Great, thanks very much, Charlie, for that. Michelle, over to you.
Well, the next most popular question is also around allyship, and I guess people wanted more. The question was, what has been the biggest thing an ally has done to support you? So is there anything that either Nina or Philip would like to add in terms of allyship, that stands out and that you're happy to share?
I'll have a go. I mean, I think when I was starting my career, there's no concept of allyship. It was not a thing. So it's a hard question to answer. I think though that I wish more people could spot sort of danger zones that are difficult for LGBT people in the workplace. So the one I would often, a lot of people want to make their team work better. We're often working remotely in the EA, we're out in the field a lot, we're not in an office anymore, right? So it's a big priority for lots of managers out there to make sure their teams cohere and they know each other. But actually how you do that can be really difficult for LGBT people. These sort of, there's no phrase that strikes more terror into my heart than icebreaker, right? I just hate them, right? And so one thing I do, and I think it's actually good for not just for LGBT, but all sorts of inclusion. I don't do them. If you think you want to get your team to work together, find other ways to do it. Okay. Do something together that's constructive, but don't ask people to talk about their own identity just cold in an environment. There's a few things there that would make life a lot less stressful for lots of people, I think, and that's just something I want to say.
Okay. So no more icebreakers, folks. You've heard it from the top. Charlie, was there anything you wanted to add to that, apart from the empathy? Nina?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about my colleagues. I'm very lucky. I work at Synchronicity Earth, and there's been some conversations I've had where people have not known where I'm coming from in various ways, and I've had really open conversations with people who are really, really wanting to learn, and the kind of questions that they're asking are coming from a place of thinking hard about how they're asking what they're asking. And due to that, like, I was able to come out more at work. For me, it's not just a matter of my sexuality, it's the matter that I'm a drag performer as well, and that can be quite a strange thing. And a couple of years ago, when I had a really, really big show, I was performing in the West End with Pride in London, and I mentioned it to my colleagues, and they were so excited for me, and a whole group of them came, and like a group of people who maybe wouldn't have otherwise been comfortable coming to one of my shows. And they were, honestly, when I think about allyship, it looks a lot like the way that they responded to that news and the way they came into that space. And I was so proud that they were there with me, because I've not always been out at work.
Beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, we got one from Sarah Dawkins. When we meet for PIN 2035, so get your crystal ball out. What do you think will be the latest LGBTQI plus history successes? I'll give you a moment to think.
How optimistic do you want, Sarah? She wants
Go for it.
She wants optimism, guys.
Yes. I'm hoping that the trans community are going to be completely mainstreamed and accepted without prejudice. May well be. We might not need pride.
We quite like celebrating, though. And we quite like attention. So, yeah.
Yes.
No, I think so. I think it looks like, I think it was Manoj who was talking back about, like, ancient Greece, where it was just, like, we assume, I don't know, we weren't there, but celebrated and normal, and that is something that I would love. And I think the particular ways that we very creatively like to express that, I have visions of that from my, like, art brain. It's things like, I mentioned my friend's show, Queer Planet, like that being on TV, that being on the BBC, and in terms of how events like this could look. I did hear you when you said that this could be a cabaret show at some point, and I agree, shockingly. You know, it looks like that. It looks like queer people not just necessarily being invited, but also leading how the expression looks. And just say, I don't think people necessarily have to be flamboyant to be queer. It just happens.
I totally agree with you on that. I think that what I'd love to be able to see is that communities actually live in peace side by side. When I was a child growing up in Kenya, my experiences were, you know, we had Hindu communities, Jewish communities, Islamic communities, Sikh communities, Vora communities, Christian communities, and we all lived side by side. We celebrated each other's traditions, we celebrated each other's festivities, and there was none of what we experience today. And I just hope that we seize, and it may not happen in my lifetime, but I certainly hope that there's a day that comes that communities can actually live in peace the world over. And that's what I'd like to see.
I'm sure everybody would like to see that. And in fact, it sounds just like growing up in Plymouth in the 1980s. Yeah, Union Street was not the place you wanted to set foot in. Charlie, I don't know if I can come to you with that question as well, because what do the young people want?
Oh my gosh. I think I can't speak for all of young people, mostly because I'm barely one now, but I'm clinging on. But I think for me, I don't have some grand image. I'm not a great imaginer, but for me, the future that I would love it's a feeling. It's cozy. It's comfortable. It's acceptance in all forms, and that's what I'm really looking for and really hopeful for, is being able to walk into a space and walk into a room and genuinely feel belonging, because I've not yet felt that, I think, in any organization or green space here, and even where I'm from in Nigeria. It's very difficult being mixed race.
Yeah.
So I think that is the ultimate, hope, goal, dream.
Yeah. Philip.
I mean, I think just talk about the EA. You know, we have a very good, very secure declaration system in the EA, and there's about 800 of our staff have declared they're LGBT on that system, and that's helping us track how people feel about working in the EA. And what's really startling is the two groups who are feel most excluded in the workplace at the EA are bisexuals and non-binary people. And I don't know all about why that is. But I suspect that there are real issues about whether those people feel included within the LGBT community. That I think is something I'd like to see improved over the time. And also, I suspect at work it's particularly difficult. So that's one thing I would say. I think the other thing I would say is, and you were talking about racism, I think there is a lot of racism actually within the LGBT community as well. So how we address that, I think, as a community, it'd be great to celebrate some success and progress on that by 2035. So I think there's plenty of work to do. And that is before anyone tries to roll back our rights, which is also something we have to defend against.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our next question is, Tora asked a really good question, referencing Marion's comment about our recent People in Nature survey, telling us that LGBTQ plus folk are less likely to access nature or don't feel safe accessing nature. What can we do to make these spaces feel more welcoming and inclusive? You seem ready. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what occurred to me is what we were saying earlier about networks and often feeling safer when you know that you're around queer people. You know, people can say they're allies and you don't know for sure. And also you were talking about the breadth of experience within different identities across the spectrum. And so one identity might be normalized and accepted and another might not. And there are incredible network groups that you can welcome to those spaces and ask them to run events, ask them to invite their network. And then those people will come knowing that they will be surrounded by people who are part of their community and therefore more likely to make them feel safe. And I think one of our speakers last year, Lily, I think mentioned quite a few of these. And so I think finding those networks and working with them, putting on events with them, that can invite new people to your spaces and show that you're welcoming. And then they might come after that. But we have such incredible community organizers. Use them.
Anyone else?
I think it's important we reclaim the territory, really. I think you know, one of the great privileges of my job is I get to go all around England. Lots and lots of communities, very rural communities, places I would never otherwise have gone. And, you know, I genuinely believe British people are incredibly tolerant and kind and open and community spirited. So I think some of these fears are not necessarily real, but we need to demonstrate that these places are safe. And you can do that the way you're describing with events. You can do it by community organising in particular places. So I think it can be done. The other thing I think is really important is telling stories about places. Something we're doing in the Environment Agency quite a lot is we have sort of QR codes and displays about what we're doing in local areas. You can see why we're building a flood defence, what is the history of the place. I think there's more we could do to kind of tell more stories about some of the localities we're working in. I think they could be more inclusive as well. So there's a few ideas there that we take forward.
I think a lot of work culturally and societally has to happen for us, for LGBTQ plus people to feel at home in nature and to feel like it is inclusive and accessible for all. Lily is a part of one of my favorite spaces that does give me that slight glimmer of, wow, this green space is for me. It's a group called Misery Party. It's a sober LGBTQ plus collective, and we meet once a month. We would occasionally go on walks together. We meet at Bethnal Green Nature Reserve, and the feeling that I get with those people is indescribable, because even the way that they talk and the way they were all allowed to just be and settle in nature is something that I cannot get in any other space. But to really make that inclusive and accessible is hard, because just our presence either me by myself or me with this group, it's a political statement walking out into nature, and that's not our choice. We're not choosing to try and make a statement or say something. Just the fact that we are there is a massive statement. And often we don't want to enter green space to make a statement. We want to enter this green space because we want to be healed by it. We want to connect with the land. We want to connect with our ancestors. We want nature to be the great teacher that it is. And that's often taken away from us because we're being observed and perceived and questioned. Sorry, that's a really...
No, that's great. That's great. I think people need to hear that, because I was just reflecting on about intersectionality. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm not obviously a member of the LGBTQ community, but I am a black woman and I don't feel safe in green spaces or in nature spaces on my own unless I'm with colleagues or with other people that can help that safety element. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that in.
Well, it probably answers several other questions that we've had as well.
Nick?
Around the NNRs and reserves, of how we can make them more inclusive and more diverse for communities. So I think that's a lesson for us really to take away, and be organising things that are specifically for and inclusive, to bring people into those reserves. And we have thought about doing one of these, a reserve, in future. So watch this space. So that's good. Somewhere where there's good Wi-Fi, though. Yeah. Thanks, Marion. You're being recorded now, remember? Okay. So on to the next question. This is quite an interesting one, actually. I'm someone who keeps my sexuality private in work due to previous negative experiences. What do we think we can do better to ensure that those who may be in a similar situation to myself feel safe in the workplace? Phil, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I'm sorry that you're in that situation, but don't compound it by feeling bad about it. If that's the right call for you, that is good, and you should protect yourself. I think this is really hard because, particularly for Natural England and for the Environment Agency, we're right around the country, 190 work locations for the EA. And inevitably we have a lot of different line managers, some of whom are very good at this and some of whom are less good at this. And as the chief executive, you want to hear about those experiences because you want to be able to address them and raise awareness and capability across all those line managers. And what you tend to find is there are pockets of people who are struggling and other areas where there's excellent practice. And I think that's probably true for many large organisations. One thing I think we can do is make sure you have someone to talk to. That person could be outside of the line. It could be the network. We actually have a thing that's not quite a grievance, not quite a whistleblowing process now in the EA, where you can talk about a difficult experience and not expect it to be followed up. So you're not starting a sort of grievance or a process, but you're just letting people like me know what happened. That is, I think, really powerful. That can help us improve our policies and what we're going to do. And actually, could you be connected with other people in your work location who might be able to help you, other allies in the area? You won't know in your office who may be able to help you. So there's a few things there that we could do, and we're trying to do that in the EA to make that better. I think visibility is important. That's why I'm here today as well. You're not on your own in that endeavour. And actually, probably in most locations in the EA, there will be other people there you could talk to. So I hope you're not feeling completely isolated, our questioner, and I hope you're not feeling unheard. And actually, your experience, certainly, I'm sure I can speak for Marion as well, we want to hear about those experiences because it helps us be better in our work as well. So thank you for raising that.
Thanks, Phil. Nina or Charlie, have you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think there's just, as you say, it's adding safety where you can, and I'm also involved in EDI things that are not about my the groups that I belong to, and I often find it, I wonder if you do, easier to advocate for groups that aren't mine. Coming to this last year was the first time I'd been in a space like this, visible at work, talking about it, and I certainly had not been somebody bringing up queer issues at work before that. But I very strongly advocate for other groups. I find it easier. It's far less likely to make me cry like I did when I talked last year. And so I think that's what it looks like. There's sort of things that you know, like talking about your pronouns, or and just having them there on your email signature, or when somebody's like planning an event, just sort of saying, oh, can we make sure that we have these things in place, even if it's not your group, like that, those things do make a huge difference. And even though you're not representing your group, you just need to feel a bit more comfortable in speaking up for them. I know that can be scary, even just because you're just like, I don't want to assume I know what they'd say, but honestly, it does make a difference to speak up for them. Just, do your homework first.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Oh, we have another question that is, how do you handle the sense of not fitting into the team or a team as an LGBTQ plus person? For example, when everyone else is discussing marriage and kids in a straight heteronormative fashion, like, they're getting married, they're a cis man getting married to a cis woman. How do you handle that sense of belonging, I guess, or not belonging?
I have quite a lot of relief. That's not my life, actually, so I'm usually sitting there just feeling quite smug. But I think, there are often, sometimes for sure, but there is often a fair amount of assumptions there as well. Like, you may see what you think is a straight presenting couple, and one of those people could be non-binary. One of those people could be bisexual, and they often are. So many of them are. There's just people watching online. I see you. I have so many friends who are like closeted that way at work, because you assume because of their partners, what you can see of their partner, that you know that. But I think asexual is also an identity that you may never ever learn from somebody, like in any context, and it's also more common than you think. And I know, like, I have friends who've talked about having asexual partners, and honestly, nobody in their life knows. And I talked about non-monogamy earlier, and that is also just far more common than ethical non-monogamy. It's far more common than people think. Non-ethical is also very common, but you don't know the ways that those partnerships are interacting in the real world. And trust me, there is far more interesting stuff going on below the surface, just like in the natural world.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, please do.
Look, folks, give yourself a break, right? You don't get a promotion, and you don't get a job opportunity because you go drinking with your colleagues, or you talk about sport with them, or you are one of the gang, right? You get them for being competent. And I do a lot of promotion balls, I do a lot of interviews with people, and I tell you now that you don't have to be part of the gang, you have to be a competent person and have the right skills. So you are good enough. You don't have to do all of this socialising. If it's too much, don't do it. And bear in mind, if you are having to do it, it's a big load on you. That's the first point. I think very much agree with your point about not over-reading other people's... You assume things about other people that aren't necessarily... They may also be feeling real uncomfortable. I mean, actually a lot of people feel uncomfortable about conversations that are very focused on family and home when they're in the work environment, right? There's lots of reasons why that's not... I think the third thing is, can we help find spaces and ways we can connect with our colleagues that aren't like that? Doing things together. A project together. We have volunteering days at the EA. That's a great way of doing something in nature with your colleagues, and then you haven't got to ask them questions. You can talk about what you're doing together with them. That might way through that.
But I do think that as a form of connection, people do use that as a, do you have a partner? Like, are you single? Do you have kids? I get do you have kids quite a lot? And I'm like, no, because people assume like a woman of a certain age must have children. So I think it's how do people handle that when they are in those situations, and it is to do they might feel uncomfortable discussing their sexuality.
I don't know if this is a really good technique, but the technique that I like to utilize is kind of turning it into a kind of bingo card game. Like, oh, what assumptions is this person going to make about me? And I think there's so many serious stuff in life, and this, not to say that this isn't a serious one, but I think it is also important to try and find some joy and humor in those moments, because it is a good form of medicine in some ways, and that's just my way of dealing with that, or deflecting. I don't know.
Yeah. People think men of a certain age have children as well.
Yeah, that's a great example of a question I don't think... People should be very careful before they ask about that, right? And it can be a very tricky and upsetting question to ask for anybody. So I think there's a bit of a... We can help by being good allies, by not favouring that kind of conversation, and being a bit careful how we ask those kind of questions.
I usually say the right man hasn't come. along. I'm waiting for the knight in shining armour to ride by, but he's got to come quick. Right, okay. I think this is probably going to be the last question.
I've got a question, though.
Right, go for it.
I wanted to ask you about both, like, what is your favourite place in nature, and also if you could bring the community, your community, anywhere in the world to share somewhere that's spectacular in nature, where would it be? Two big questions, sorry. Your favourite place, where would you bring the community for a rave up, essentially, for a massive party, burlesque party, whatever you want to do?
Well, I love Kent. I got to know Kent because I worked in Border Force and I worked in Folkestone a long time, and I spend a lot of time in Kent now. And I particularly like Dungeness. I think it's an amazing place. It's an amazing place for Natural England and for the Environment Agency. We're both very big players in Dungeness. It's got. I have a bit of a passion for bumblebees, and we are a bit of a bumblebee superpower, particularly in Kent, actually. So, and in
The
spring,
Garden of England.
Exactly. It's also where Derek Jarman had his garden, a very important figure in British gay history and in gardening. So if you're thinking of one place to go in spring and look at the spring flowers in Dungeness. I promise you'll have a great visit, and it's very LGBT inclusive.
Okay, thank you. But where would you take everyone, apart from there, if you could go anywhere in the world? Because that's the UK, further afield.
A place I've loved a lot is the western side of the Andes, because it's my favourite bird lives there, which is the plate-billed mountain toucan. It's an excellent bird. It's on my phone. I'll show you a picture of one later.
I can't wait. I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to see this bird. I'm sure there's a lot of twitchers in the audience. So does the EA budget and the NE budget?
Sadly not.
No.
I am on record.
Not enough TNS
Sadly
for us.
not.
Okay. Fine. Thanks for sharing that, Phil. Anyone else want to go next?
Yeah, mine is, very intimate. It's not well known at all. It is my nan's garden in Port Harcourt, which is where I half grew up, and it's where I fell in love with nature. So it's really meaningful to me. And my nana, so where I need to give a little bit of background as to why it's so important. Where I'm from, it's called Port Harcourt. It used to be the garden city of River State. It's not.
It's in Nigeria.
It's in Nigeria, yeah. It's not any longer the garden city of River State, because it is the oil capital of Nigeria, which comes with a lot of environmental destruction, a lot of loss of livelihoods. There's lots of pollution there. But my nana, ever since I've lived there, even when my mum and aunts and uncles were growing up, has always kept this semi-wild garden that everyone hated because there were so many bushes, the mosquitoes were ravenous all the time, but it's also an oasis for damselflies and dragonflies and African starlings and just all of this beautiful nature that I love. Then it also taught me real fear. That place taught me how to be really scared of the power and harshness of nature. But it's just a really beautiful spot.
I mean, you're going to have to give us an example now
of
what scared you. What scared you?
So I also love nature photography. And I often, whenever I'm back home, I'll go and take some photos of the garden or creatures that I find. And there's a picture of my face covered in mosquitoes, even though I've doused myself in all of the as much mosquito repellent as possible, and they will still come for you because they're starving, and no one goes into that garden because there's so many mosquitoes. There's snakes. We once opened the washing machine and a snake just slithered out. It's dangerous.
Yeah, like the Caribbean, there's lots of very large things that you don't normally see in the UK.
Exactly.
I concur. But Charlie, also, where are you taking the community for a massive party?
For a massive party?
Yes.
I'm taking them to Nana's garden.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. They're going to be eaten alive.
Yes. They also need to suffer.
Fair enough.
I love that question. For favourite place, that's unbelievably hard. But what I often do at the moment, and I crave doing it for, you know, people talk about us being broody as women of a certain age. I was broody for a dog.
Yes.
Very, very gay thing. And I was broody for a dog for a long time. And what I really wanted was to be able to take my dog and just like go away to a cabin in the woods and then spend time alone, but not really alone because she would be there, and not really alone because I was in nature. And I started doing that during lockdown, and it's always been a real source of reset for me, just to have that time. And we started going to Wales, and I fell in love with Pembrokeshire, which has the most beautiful forests and waterfalls and beaches. My dog loves the beach so much. And so that is where I would say my favourite place is, the whole of Wales. And I did actually...
Don't limit yourself.
Yeah, I did actually take my friends there, but I'm not going to use it because you said it could be anywhere in the globe. So therefore, budget is covered. And so I was thinking, I used to be a guide, a safari guide in South Africa, and something that I loved there was just, it was our job to take people around, introduce them to the natural world and tell them stories. And that is honestly still one of the best jobs. I decided to do conservation because biodiversity needs protecting, but I loved that job. And so I love the idea of being able to connect people to the stories and tell and show them, as I was mentioning earlier, just some of those stories about just how queer nature is. And so because budget is, you know, off the charts, I'm taking them underwater, and I'm taking it to show them some of my favorite queer and wonderful things underwater. So a place that I've never been diving and want to is in Southeast Asia. There's various things there, but like the nudibranchs, there's something called the flamboyant cuttlefish. Look it up. It is maybe the gayest creature. And then second to that would be all the nudibranchs. Their gender is all over the spectrum, and they could represent every single pride flag that exists. So taking them underwater. Haven't picked the spot, but like somewhere in Southeast Asia.
I'm there. We're all there.
But you haven't told us what kind of dog you've got.
Oh, yeah.
Vital information.
Do you want a picture?
I really do.
Yeah. She is a Samoyed. She's white and fluffy.
Oh my goodness.
She's really, really cute, guys.
For those
I'm
who can't
sorry
see,
you can't all
I don't know if
see.
the camera can zoom in on
lucky up
this,
here.
but it's a very cute dog.
Yeah, if you imagine like a polar bear and an Arctic fox, and then just like imagine that a toy designer had another go at putting those together, that is Mishka.
That's so cute.
Excellent.
Nick, are we going to take questions from the floor? Or have you got some more come in?
Well, we could do actually just one or two. I think
Yeah.
we've got time, have we? Yeah.
One more question.
Okay, one
yeah.
more question from the audience. If anybody did have a question, they couldn't get into Slido. If not, there is one more question online. This has been a brilliant event. Thank you, David.
Oh, yeah.
How do we build on this success to increase our reach and impact?
That's a very big question.
Oh, yes.
Any thoughts? How do we build on this? We've got everyone in a room today. Everyone's heard what you've had to say, but then we know from events sometimes like it ends when you leave from here. So how do we continue this going forward? All of you have to
Yes,
answer.
all of you.
All of you have to
Let's pick
answer.
on somebody.
That's okay. I think when I was invited to speak, and I asked if I could invite some people into the room, and a conversation I had with somebody who's come, who I invited them, Meg from SOS UK, was that they had no idea that this event was happening. And so I think we still could do a better job. Like, I work for an organisation just over 30 people, same with Meg, and obviously some of the organisations represented here are huge. And you guys have queer networks. I'm so happy for you. But like, it would be very odd to have that in my organisation, as with like all the like different minority groups that we talk about, including that creating a network. It's two people having lunch, so I think being able to spread these networks across these different organizations of different sizes. So somebody who's working as one in a 5 team, and it may be that they're queer, it may be that they're a person of color, and that the only one that they are able to connect with the wider sector. I think that's really important. And so us doing a better job of, I'm so glad that this event is here, but like there are so many people that haven't heard about it that it would have meant a lot to. And so I think just really working on making sure that these networks are even more visible, and they cross into organizations of different sizes with different budgets.
Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. Yeah, please do.
I think I totally agree agree with you there because I don't know if you guys know, but actually the RHS also celebrates Pride, and actually I think it would be fantastic for the RHS and Natural England celebrating Pride in Nature together. Let's kind of get the two bodies together to start discussing what other things that you can do together. One of the failures within, I believe, within the horticultural industry is that there are lots of bodies. So you have Barley, you have APL, you have RHS, you have the SGD, but they all go around doing their own little thing by themselves. Nobody speaks to each other. And what we have been basically suggesting is that all of these bodies need to come together to actually promote diversity and inclusivity, but not just diversity and inclusivity. Everything that is to do with horticulture, they should be discussing it across the board. So likewise, I think it would be great to get the RHS and Natural England together just to see how we can actually work together and make a.
This has been a brilliant event. Thank you, David.
Oh, yeah.
How do we build on this success to increase our reach and impact?
That's a very big question.
Oh, yes.
Any thoughts? How do we build on this? We've got everyone in a room today. Everyone's heard what you've had to say, but then we know from events sometimes like it ends when you leave from here. So how do we continue this going forward? All of you have to answer. All of you have to answer.
Let's pick on somebody.
That's okay. I think when I was invited to speak, and I asked if I could invite some people into the room, and a conversation I had with somebody who's come, who I invited them, Meg from SOS UK, was that they had no idea that this event was happening. And so I think we still could do a better job. Like, I work for an organisation just over 30 people, same with Meg, and obviously some of the organisations represented here are huge. And you guys have queer networks. I'm so happy for you. But like, it would be very odd to have that in my organisation, as with like all the like different minority groups that we talk about including, that creating a network, it's two people having lunch. So I think being able to spread these networks across these different organisations of different sizes. So somebody who's working as one in a 5 team, and it may be that they're queer, it may be that they're a person of colour, and that the only one that they are able to connect with the wider sector. I think that's really important. And so us doing a better job of, I'm so glad that this event is here, but like there are so many people that haven't heard about it that it would have meant a lot to. And so I think just really working on making sure that these networks are even more visible and they cross into organisations of different sizes with different budgets.
Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. Yeah, please do.
I totally agree with you there because I don't know if you guys know, but actually the RHS also celebrates Pride, and actually I think it would be fantastic for the RHS and Natural England celebrating Pride in Nature together. Let's kind of get the two bodies together to start discussing what other things that you can do together. One of the failures within, I believe, within the horticultural industry is that there are lots of bodies. So you have Barley, you have APL, you have RHS, you have the SGD, but they all go around doing their own little thing by themselves. Nobody speaks to each other. And what we have been basically suggesting is that all of these bodies need to come together to actually promote diversity and inclusivity, but not just diversity and inclusivity. Everything that is to do with horticulture, they should be discussing it across the board. So likewise, I think it would be great to get the RHS and Natural England together just to see how we can actually work together and make a bigger thing of Pride.
I hope the senior leaders in the room that have connections with RHS are happy to connect us up, because we're happy to do it. But yeah, we need those connections.
Well, if they don't, then I can do an introduction.
Brilliant, thank you.
Great stuff, thanks. There we go. Yeah, handing microphones around. Yeah, no, that's a brilliant idea. Maybe we need a community committee member on our network. Johnny, that's something for you to sort out now, as Johnny will be our new chair. So, okay, we better wrap up there, I think. Unless Charlie...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Let them finish.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you go for it.
Thank you. I have quite a few gripes with the environmental sector as a whole, and I feel like this as a platform, as the seed of some actual change, could be really powerful if we've already learned how unrepresentative the top levels of all of these big environmental organizations and charities are, how they're lacking in people from minoritized ethnic backgrounds or people who identify as being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And to me, that's such a shame, because I can sense that there is a want or like some motivation there to address these changes and to really create inclusive projects that are platforming people who look a bit more like us or who think a bit more like us. But often the money is stuck with these organizations who really don't represent us or our rights or our interests. And that's really difficult, because we know that there are all of these grassroots groups, these amazing individuals out there who are so connected, who do so much work with our community. And I would love, from one of the outcomes from an event like this, is to really find a way to funnel that movement, that money, that resource, that power to these organizations, so that they can continue doing that amazing work that they do and just explode in power and influence. Because I think the power and influence is in this room.
It is in the room, yes. So thanks for sharing that. I think definitely this is a seed, as you said, and I think people are listening. And I think one of the issues can be that people that come to these events as allies are the people that already, are interested. And it's about influencing as allies, those of you that are allies in the room, influencing people so that it's not just seen as a niche thing or just, like we were looking at data recently in our EDI networks and who belongs to them, and it's overwhelmingly women. Just putting that out there. In Natural England's EDI networks, we by far have the women make up maybe 80 to 90% of our networks. So that's an issue, for example, just to illustrate. So we need to be influencing more people on many different levels. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you.